Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Great Malabite.
Good morning, Ruben.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Victoria Tundu, MQ Abiola.
Good morning, my favorite, Mr. Efeni.
Yes, let's start with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of records. The lead story, PIA. Buhari blames past leaders for lacking political will to transform sector. Says Nigeria lost $50 billion investment in 10 years over non-passage of PIB. Silver, NNPC will no longer handle Federation crude sales. Governors pick holes in new law. Legislation can be brought back to the National Assembly for amendment, says Lawan. FIRS Act will affect Nigeria's 2022 revenues. New law, not perfect, but step in right direction, says Neiti boss. Ozekome is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Statute reflects APC's commitment to restructure Nigeria's economy, say APC governors. Yes, you cannot deny President Buhari this air of victory, because after the long road of this Petroleum Industry Act, eventually, he is the one who has signed it into law under his watch. The Ninth National Assembly has been able, at least, to put this together. But when you talk about political will and political courage, I think we'll still wait a little longer to see how courageous this president is to see this through. Because by setting up this committee that will use 12 months, the president has effectively bought another 12 months to leave subsidy in place. I hope I am wrong, because the best time to remove subsidy was in 2011, when somebody summoned the political will to do so, but lacked the political courage when there was a grand swell of opposition to the removal of subsidy. The next best time to remove subsidy would have been in 2015, when the President Muhammadu Buhari assumed office. Although in words, he said there was no subsidy. And Rufai, just to put it in proper context, the president said there was no subsidy at one point. Then suddenly, the NNPC pop up with the term under recovery. Then at one point, there was a convergence of terminology, and everybody agreed that they're still paying subsidy. And today, we all know better that the nation pays so much to subsidize petroleum products, many of which find their way to neighboring countries. And that is where we talk of political will plus political courage to do the needful. Then, as we speak, of course, in the month of May, we know what happened to FARC. There was no money to share because the NNPC had to use money meant for states to share to pay subsidy, or what it calls under recovery. So, in as much as we give the president the credit that he has appended the signature to this act, you can never take that from him. But we'll need more of political courage to see through the implementation. Tundu, you called it kicking the can down the road or postponing the evil day. But we'll see out how this committee. But the other aspect is the legal challenge that may follow. The governors have written their reservations. Mike Ezekome has also recommended that aggrieved stakeholders should approach the courts. I know he's not saying that because he wants lawyers to benefit, but because perhaps there are legal challenges in one aspect, saying that the PIA, aspects of it contradicts some aspects, portions of the Constitution. But let's look at how other newspapers are reporting this quickly. The Punch newspaper, Petroleum Industry Act, states tackled federal government today as FAC meets. NBA advises governors. We will review the law at FAC today and disclose our position. Benue Commissioner challenged Petroleum Industry Act in court. NBA Secotr tells state government. The Vanguard newspaper, PIA, silver under fire, over 3% equity, Buhari begs. Says Nigeria lost 50 billion in 10 years to non-passage of PIB, approves implementation committee headed by Silva, 3% not good deal for Niger Delta, says Pandef, HostCom, the host community. Others, Lambas Silva reject Buhari's appeal to accept 3%. APC governors back Buhari on Petroleum Industry Act, say party committed to economic restructuring. Lawal hints on amendment of new law. Now, the Leadership newspaper, Petroleum Industry Act, experts fault federal government's 12-month implementation plan, say no infrastructure in place for effective implementation. NNPC can't wind down in 6 months. Law will reduce government revenue, FIRS. Progressive governors hail PMB. Niger Delta demands restructuring. The Nigerian Tribune, Nigeria lost 50 billion investment in 10 years on petroleum industry stagnation. Buhari. The Daily Independent newspaper, another aspect, expect benefits of Petroleum Industry Act from 2023. Federal Inland Revenue Service. Yes, the service is saying that the signing of the petroleum industry bill into law will only start yielding positive results from 2023 against immediate expectations. News Direct, PIA federal government to unveil roadmap for subsidy removal. We'll wait for that. Says no sack of oil workers to finalize implementation in 12 months. Daily Trust, doubts trail surrender of Boko Haram members. Repentant fighters could be deceptive traditional ruler. We are sure they are insurgents, defense headquarters. We will not forgive them, IDPs, residents. Experts call for cautious optimism on the issue of the so-called repentant or surrender of Boko Haram. Now, the Daily Sun newspaper, Yoruba, Igbo, Arewa, Middle Belt elders back Masari's self-defense call. Say situation has reached point where Nigerians must take destiny in their hands. Yes, Ruben, you recall we have a law against illegal concerning possession of firearms. So without amending that law, so that, like in the US, we can all go to the shop and purchase AK-47, which is the preferred weapon of the bandits these days. Until we do that, all this call for self-defense will amount to nothing, because if you go and buy one to fight a bandit, you may just be the one running against the law, foul of the law, and the bandits will be in the bush doing his business. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, my office can't function effectively. The Auditor General of the Federation cries out, blames lack of federal audit service law, underfunding. Others says 4.973 trillion of substantiated balances found in 2019 audit report. Figure above the materiality level of 89.34 billion set for the audit. Yes, this is one area the president must pay attention to. If you want to fight corruption, you must make the office of the Auditor General very effective and functional. Now, the Guardian newspaper, telcos, 20 years on, telcos attain 297 million phone lines, fail on financial inclusion security. Security experts blame network operators. We provide network information to security operatives, says telcos. GSMA sees prospects in telco-led mobile money. 20 years of telecommunications, mobile telecommunications in Nigeria, and that assessment is being done. Now, if we just look at the foreign newspapers quickly, the Guardian newspaper of UK, MPs lambast Johnson over Afghanistan humiliation. Now, Boris Johnson faced Parliament yesterday, and there was a fury from all wings of the Conservative Party over UK's conduct in Afghanistan, with 11 former cabinet ministers among over 30 MPs of the Conservative Party and peers expressing anger, frustration of Britain's failure in intelligence and preparations. Of course, talking about the chaos that greeted the pullout of US and British troops in Afghanistan. And of course, the parliamentarians did not spare President Biden. As the Daily Telegraph is also reporting, Parliament holds the president in contempt on a day when Westminster found its full voice against, again, MPs and peers unite to condemn the dishonor of Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan and his criticism of the troops he left behind to face the Taliban. Yes, Washington Post also reporting from the Afghan capital, Taliban meets early resistance, protests drop violent reprisals, harsh tactics contradict assertions of restraint. Yes, in at least two cities yesterday, there were protests against the Taliban, their grip on power. But again, expectedly, contrary to their new posturing, the Taliban came out to deal with the protests violently. Ruben Rufai and Tundu.
Mr. Fenia, so I want to segue this into the Nigerian story and the fact that terrorists are saying they surrender their arms. I don't believe in that rubbish those terrorists are doing. It's a strategy. People are beginning to say it. Leaders, village heads are beginning to say that this Boko Haram, that they say they are surrendering to the army should be weary. They are coming out to get more intelligence. When you look at the people, I saw a video, an amateur video yesterday, it's mostly their wives and children. You know what they're sending that message out? That's the soft power. So once people see the wives and the children of these terrorists, they become, empathic towards them. And these people are coming to gather out intelligence. These are not the real fighters.
That's what you're suspecting.
That's what I'm suspecting. The fighters are still in there. They say they are surrendering. We are not seeing all the APCs that the Boko Haram people took. I'm taking the armored personnel carriers. The gun trucks that they took, they're not surrendering all of that. They're not surrendering ammunitions. So those people are still there in the bushes around Timbuktu Triangle and some other areas. Their camps are still vibrant. These people are deliberately coming out because I think of the fight that is going on between them and ISWAP. There are two factions, the Al-Banawi faction and this former Shekau faction that has been defeated. So it's all a strategy on what is going on inside of there. So let's be careful. And that segues into what is happening in Afghanistan. The Taliban problem. This was how America thought, we'll keep them under wraps. In fact, there's a picture that says that President Reagan did say that the Taliban were like the founding fathers of America in 1985. And now it has become a problem the Americans cannot solve. They say, oh, they will keep women's rights. We were talking about that yesterday. But they've killed some women for not wearing the burqa already.
Apparently so.
So the Taliban has started. They are saying, no, they will respect media rights. But the owner of Tolo TV in Afghanistan, one of the most watched TV station, is saying that the Taliban told him that, okay, we'll keep you on air for now. So they might cut media very soon, and everything will be back to square zero. So there's no Taliban 2.0. It's the same brute, dangerous Taliban that is operating.
I'm not sure about that story of the woman who was killed. I'm still waiting for that to be properly confirmed. But whether or not she was killed, I'm sorry, I hate to be a pessimist. We can expect that to happen. And I want to go back to the story that you brought from the House of Commons, where Boris Johnson and Dominic Raab were excoriated, and rightly so, for this kind of disgraceful exit.
Foreign Secretary and they were on holidays when this was happening.
And Dominic Raab delegated an important phone call. It was a mess. But who stood out for me, really, was Theresa May. Because you have to give her words all the weight. Because she once sat in Boris Johnson's seat, didn't she? So she knows exactly of what she speaks. And it goes to show when you're really interested in service rather than power. She was the UK PM. She could have resigned, but she decided to become a backbencher because she's all about service. And you really have to give that woman her respect. They deserve the shellacking that they got. And I just don't understand why President Biden is digging his heels in, pretending that all this is okay. He has given no indication of regret, which would be useful at this time.
There's no other way it could have been done.
That's obviously nonsense.
That's nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Well, Afghanistan, I think it was very good yesterday that a wall of fury was erected by MPs, cabinet ministers, former soldiers, former members of government at that emergency meeting of the House of Commons to condemn the handling of the crisis by both UK and its allies and the United States. And both President Biden and Prime Minister Johnson were properly, addressed. Although Prime Minister Johnson was on the defensive, he said with the US troops having pulled out, there was no way the UK and its allies could have stayed back. Okay, then how about those translators that Dominic Raab failed to make the relevant call while he was trying to run international relations from a beach. And then, of course, President Biden continues to say, well, they trained 300,000, soldiers for Afghanistan. Well, we've been told that that number is inaccurate, although it's been quoted again and again. The IMF now has suspended the access of Afghanistan to the SDR, up to about $440 million, which will have gone to the Taliban on Monday. But that's not going to happen with the intervention of the U.S. Treasury. And that should draw the international community's attention to the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Look, there was a story about a British serviceman saying that the ordinary Afghan women, they were throwing their children across the fence so that they could be taken away by Americans and by the British. And the guy was quoted in one of the papers this morning and saying, at night, all of them wept, all the servicemen, because they were confronted with this story of hell on earth, as that particular newspaper described. So what's going on in Afghanistan is a nightmare. Taliban soldiers, a death squad, we're told is going from house to house, looking around for those who supported the American forces and trying to punish them. So no matter what the issue, whatever may be the issue in Afghanistan, political, that is, ideological, that is, I don't think that the rest of the world should abandon the ordinary people of Afghanistan who are running away from their own homeland and who have been oppressed by the Taliban. The Taliban, they've made all kinds of promises. They will defend their women's rights. They will not, there will be no reprisal attacks. But that is what is happening right now in Afghanistan, and the rest of the world must not look the other way. But my favorite story in the papers today is a story on page 18 of the Daily Trust. I think it's mentioned also on the front page of the paper, how despite the fact that the Bureau of Statistics is telling us that inflation dropped in July, how the reality in the markets of Nigeria is different. Food inflation is still very high. The excuse is that this has something to do with forex, this has something to do with farming, but the truth of the matter is that there's usually a disconnect, between these statistical figures that are thrown at us on a regular basis and the reality of the pandemic of empty pockets and hunger in our stomachs that we have to deal with on a daily basis in Nigeria.
And for good measure, it was said, although he has denied it, that Ashraf Ghani fled with cash in his helicopter when he left Afghanistan.
No, he actually denied that.
He left
that might
with
not
cash,
be true.
money.
Yeah, but that might not be true.
Money. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Emmanuel Efeni. We'll see you again tomorrow.